Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on best practices for managing a liquid workforce. In this session, we'll briefly cover what the liquid workforce is, benefits of the liquid workforce, and the best practices for working with them. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat section, and we'll get to them answered at the end of the call. I'm Sajin. I'm the founder and CEO of Liquid, an all-in-one software platform that streamlines the way you onboard, manage, and pay your Liquid workforce. We learned a lot of our best practices at our previous company where we worked with subcontractors for our consulting business. We grew from 30 to over 400 Liquid workers in the business. And since there are no existing tools that met our needs for managing this group efficiently, we built one ourselves, which is Liquid. Today, I'll share our learnings that provide the foundation to our software. And regardless of using our software Liquid, we hope that what we share today will be helpful to you. As you know, the most modern companies are increasingly using a non-permanent Liquid workforce. It's driven by the advancement in technology such as collaboration tools, marketplaces, AI, as well as a diversity of talent and their needs. And this workforce already makes up 40% of the largest companies like Amazon and Google, and the industry spend on them will grow to more than $1 trillion in the next 10 years. So before we get too far, let's define what the liquid workforce is. Simply put, it's all the workers that are not your employees. That can be your independent contractors, your 1099 freelancers, or professional service vendors. And they can be individuals or entities who plug into your companies anytime, anywhere, and for varying durations. As you already know, there are many benefits to working with a liquid workforce. Most importantly, if you work with them as efficiently as you do with your employees, then it massively expands your resource pool beyond your permanent employees. And unlike your fixed employees, tapping the liquid workforce is very cost effective. Due to the flexibility and affordability of this group, you're able to match the right resource for each project and not be limited only to the employee pool that you already have. And fortunately, more and more, the best talent also want to work this way and are available to be hired in a way they weren't before. And even if you were to look for a full-time employee, hiring for a project in a liquid way first is a great try before you buy option. There are many barriers to working with the liquid workforce in a successful and efficient way. It first requires a different mindset and considerations. You want to consider the liquid workforce an extension of your team, augmenting your employees, and start to think of your needs in terms of series of projects and not roles. There are other barriers such as sourcing and vetting, knowing the appropriate fee structure and the amounts, compliances issues related to this group, as well as taxes, dealing with the various variable nature of expenses related to the liquid workforce, and the general administrative burden of managing this group. Today's focus of best practices will be on this last piece. So there are many systems that make it easy to work with your permanent employees. The main things you do is onboard them properly and set them up for benefits and make sure that they're paid every 2 weeks. Working with your liquid workforce is more complicated because of the variable nature of this group. Most notable difference is the continuous nature of agreeing to some scope of work, getting invoices for it, and then paying that invoice. We'll go into the details of the process, but it can feel really cumbersome if not set up right. The admin overhead is one of the main reasons why companies do not take advantage of the liquid workforce as they could and should. So before we delve into the details, I want to touch upon some general best practices. The most important is to get the process down. You want to delegate responsibilities and set up the workflow that increases efficiencies, reduces human error, and helps you stay under control. The general workflow will be similar from company to company, but you really have to make it repeatable and reliable for yourself. In addition, you want to lean towards documenting as much as possible. Again, there are many ways to make this less burdensome, but documentation of the relationship, the expectation of the projects, and details of the completed work are all things that will give you comfort on the return on your investment for each liquid worker is as high as it can be. And it's as important is to make sure that you have a system that allows for the process and documentation, as well as other needs like payments. There's specific systems designed for the liquid workforce, and you want to use that instead of as an add-on to your employee systems, especially if you're in California or New York for those compliance issues. Working with the least number of systems, preferably just one, that automates and digitizes the whole process is the ideal solution. And if you keep these process, documentation, and system in mind generally, your transition will be smooth and will be completely worth it. So now let's look at the workflow in a bit more detail. As mentioned, you first want to take the time to set up the process and systems for your company. And then when you're ready to bring on the liquid workers, you want to onboard them as efficiently and properly as possible. And once they're onboarded, you can start working with them. You'll need that set of proper expectations and what you're looking for through these clear work orders. And once the work has been completed, they'll need to send you invoices so you can pay them. So let's go through these sections a little bit more. And if I haven't said this enough yet, it's really important for you to have the least number of tools as possible. Ideally, you'll have one system that you choose that will at least handle your contracts, data collection, and payments. Then you want to figure out what your standard onboarding process is. Is it different for your US or international or individuals or entities? It really depends on what you are comfortable with. Then what you want to do is collect from each liquid worker some minimal group of contracts. So we suggest having a standard templates for master's service agreement, independent contract agreement, and confidentiality and IP agreement. So, and know where you're comfortable making exceptions. In addition, as part of this setup, you should know where you want to add some additional checks for your company. You can add triggers for things that don't match your budgets you've set, or have secondary approval requirements on single work orders or invoices that go over a certain limit. So now you're ready to bring on the liquid worker. First thing you want to do is run through a quick checklist to make sure that the worker is classified correctly. 10 to 20% of the workers are classified wrong, and they can lead to a lot of issues down the road. For more on this, you can check out our resource section of our website. And once you're good with the compliance, you'll be sending out a package of this onboarding paperwork. As much as possible, you should push to use your standard documents and process. Make sure your onboarding includes not only the contract execution, but also properly collecting relevant vendor information, as well as the tax forms such as a W-9 and W-8. It's one of the mistakes I've made in the past is not to collect those up front. So make it part of your onboarding package. One practice I like to note here is the idea of breaking out a master contract into two pieces. If in most consulting contracts that you've seen before, there is a master contract with the SOWs of details of deliverables and fees attached as an amendment. We highly suggest you think about separating them. So you want to have a master contract to set the overarching relationship between you and the worker. And then once they're on your bench, you're agreeing to each project underneath that umbrella of the master contract. So this way, as you start new projects, it's a quick way to tap your liquid worker who has already been onboarded, but just needs the project defined. And of course, you want to keep these executed documents organized and the relevant data extracted and usable. There are times that you'll need to access this data quickly, such as when you have an employment audit. Upfront organization really pays off when you need it. So as we talked about, you want a statement of work, what we call a work order, similar to a purchase order, done each time you start a project. This is where you write out a deliverable and the fee structure. We highly recommend you have it agreed to both parties each time in writing to set the expectations up front and ensure success for that project. For each work order, there should be clear who the hiring manager is. This hiring manager is responsible for initially signing off on the work order and then giving the approval that the invoice is okay to pay. There should be only one designated hiring manager for each project. We also suggest you have a work order approval process built into your organization. For example, you can have a rule that any work order from a certain department over a certain amount must get a secondary sign-off. If there's a budget for this work, it should be clearly tracked and compared against it. And at the very least, if you do these work orders right, you should always have good visibility into the upcoming expenses, which will allow you to plan and manage your workflow without any surprises. Many companies do not use a proper work order system and only know of expenses when invoices come in, which can cause some issues for cash management. So lastly, to payments. You want an easy way to collect invoices from your liquid workers. As importantly, you want them to input the data for you in whatever system, because it's better for you to have them enter and then you check versus you enter it for them. In addition, you want to provide as many tools and templates as possible without any guidance so you don't trip up compliance, so that the invoices you get have the necessary fields and the appropriate level of detail for you. Once you receive the invoice, you have to make it easy for you to check it. How do you know if the invoice is right? The two easiest ways to check against is your original work order and against the history of payments to them. So make sure the data is readily available to you when you're about to approve or pay an invoice. And how do you do that? Systems that combine the work order and invoices into the same system is a really good start. And similar to the work order system, approval system, you want to have the approval policies for your invoices. Most companies have rules in place for invoices, but not work orders. We believe it's important to have both because work orders help you keep control before the work starts, and invoices help you keep control of the cash. We believe also that the ability to pay digitally is very important. Yes, there's more float for you if you cut checks, but the few days you get from sending a check is lost in the inefficiencies and the inability to keep track of where the payments are. And to me, paying digitally just reduces the number of questions you get from your vendors. And lastly, you want a payment system that easily syncs to your accounting and helps you and your accounting team reconcile payments easily. It also readies you for tax filings at the end of the fiscal year. So all those best practices that we've learned over the years, we've built into our Liquid platform. And if you want to check us out, please visit our website or contact us. As mentioned, I'm a founder building our own company using the Liquid workforce. I use all the best practices through our Liquid software and manage a growing bench of experts who plug into our company whenever I need them. You can see my lawyer to designer to development shop to accountant working with me in various structures. And it took me a much shorter time to get them onboarded, ready to work with me because of all the upfront setup. Being able to supplement my core team to those who might not even be available to me unless it was in this Liquid way has been a key to building and growing my company in this most cost-effective, flexible, and smart way. And hope you can leverage this Liquid workforce in similar ways. I hope this webinar was helpful overview of best practices for working with your Liquid workforce. Whether you use our product or not, you can put these best practices to use and feel confident in working with this group. Our contact information is here, and now we'll open up for some questions.
Thanks, Sajin. We've got a couple of questions in on the chat. The first one is, most of my freelancers are located overseas. Are there any specific tips you have for best practices for working with international vendors?
Yes, so we'll have a subsequent webinar specifically for this topic, but yes, you can, you definitely can work with your international vendors, and the best thing for you to do is really understand the local requirements. But really, if you have proper contracts and are doing the collecting your W-8 forms, you'll already be in much better shape than most. I think one of the biggest pains actually is to pay internationally, which can become a pretty expensive. So you want a solution that allows you to pay easily, reliably, and cheaply. So Liquid has some of the onboarding processes as well as in contracts and W-8s already built in. And we also have ability for you to pay internationally. So you can check us out, but generally you want to keep all those things in mind.
Great. You mentioned misclassification and compliance issues. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So there are times where you'll have to prove that you've classified your employees correctly to the government. One specific example that I've seen is that a contractor that you've had in the past unknowingly goes to file for unemployment, which triggers an audit for your company. So you'll have to show evidence that this person, but also the rest of any other 1099 workers you've had in your company was classified correctly. And so you'll have to pull up data on your workers, contracts, work orders, invoices, et cetera. And you want to have it all accessible and easily outputted for review. And so you'll just save a lot of time having this organized and instead of scrambling for that data. But there are times like that versus other audit that can be triggered that you'll need to be aware of for compliance.
Thanks for sharing that. The next question is, I'm already using Gusto to pay my freelancers. Is that okay?
Yeah, the payroll solutions like Gusto are great for onboarding and managing your employees. But and in fact, we actually use that tool ourselves to pay our own employees. But that's really what the solution is for, and not really built for contractors. The flow of working with contractors, as mentioned before, is different and more similar to the way you work with your suppliers. So I recommend that you do have a separate system for them. And in addition, for compliance reasons, you want to separate out your contractors with your employees. So you could, for those times of compliance audits and whatnot, that you can show that they're different and you've classified them correctly. So one of the easiest things that you can do is to have them in separate platforms. And if you hire any good CFO, when they join the company, it's the first thing that they do is separate out managing contractors in a different place than the employees. And so I think that's a very best practices to separate them out.
That's a great tip. The next question, I use Bill.com for paying invoices. Is there any reason why I shouldn't continue using Bill.com?
Yeah, we were users of Bill.com as well and appreciated their features. The only issue was that it starts from invoice collection and then payment, like a lot of other payment solutions. What's missing is the onboarding process as well as the work orders. So basically, when you go to pay that invoice, we didn't know if it was right or okay to pay easily. And so we wanted that history of payments as well as the work order agreements readily available in addition to everything else I mentioned. So we think that a more comprehensive solution that takes care of the onboarding, the managing, and the payments is the way to go, which is why I think maybe considering a more comprehensive and streamlined solution like Liquid is better than Bill.com.
Got it. I think we're running out of time, so let's just do one more question. I don't have a master contract or confidentiality agreement yet, and I'm not sure I have the budget to hire a lawyer to draft these up for me. What can I do?
Yeah, you'd think that you'd need an expensive lawyer to get the right forms, but it's actually not true. There are a lot of templates out there that you can use. And if you want, we have them on Liquid as well. The most important thing here is to actually have these documents, and make sure your vendor signed them. So you protect your relationship, your IP, and your spend. Again, if you want these documents, and we have them available on Liquid, but try to get those documents and the data organized so you can access them easily. So please, reach out to us if you need some templates, or we can have you sign up on Liquid. Okay, I think that was our last question for the time. So thank you so much for joining our webinar. Hope this was really helpful. And please, again, if you have any questions or would like to learn more about our solution, reach out to us at the email shown on the screen. And we hope to see you at a later webinar. Thank you.